This oil platform is approximately as tall as a 16-story building and about as wide as 2 football fields. Its weight is so astonishing that it is even heavier than an aircraft carrier. This oil platform is called Appomattox Oil Rig, which is currently located in the Gulf of Mexico, about 130 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana in North America. However, its journey began several years ago, thousands of miles away in South Korea. There, thousands of workers and engineers were involved in building this massive platform. After 7 long years of hard work, when the Appomattox was finally ready, the engineers faced a challenge unlike anything they had ever encountered in their careers. The problem was transporting this massive structure from South Korea to the Gulf of Mexico. For this task, the world's largest marine transport vessel was called in. Lifting this enormous oil platform and placing it onto that vessel was itself a huge challenge, a process that was expected to take at least 7 days. But suddenly, they received some unexpected news. Reports came in that a powerful storm had formed in the Pacific Ocean, which was gradually turning into a super typhoon. Such intense typhoons occur only once in about 20 years, with winds reaching nearly 315 kilometers per hour. This typhoon could strike the coast of South Korea at any time within the next 7 days. And we know, when a super typhoon hits, it never leaves without causing destruction. Now, the biggest challenge for the workers, engineers, and transport specialists was this: to complete 7 days' worth of work in just 3 days. In other words, if they failed to lift this massive oil platform from the shipyard and load it onto the marine vessel within 3 days, years of hard work could be destroyed in an instant. This situation created a crisis that shook everyone, from the ground-level workers to top management. Just imagine, this was the company's biggest project, and for that very reason, there was absolutely no room for even the smallest mistake, because a terrifying super typhoon was approaching. To successfully complete this massive project and dispatch the oil platform ahead of schedule, it was extremely important to finish the remaining work as quickly as possible. For this, an entire additional workforce was brought in. The workers began working day and night so that this enormous structure could be prepared for transport as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the movement of the super typhoon was being closely monitored. They had only one hope: that the typhoon might change its direction. But that hope turned into disappointment when it was revealed that the typhoon was moving directly from the Pacific Ocean towards South Korea. Amid this, due to the workers' relentless efforts, all the remaining work on the structure was completed within just 3 days. Then began the most difficult phase: lifting this massive structure and placing it onto a floating dock. The total weight of the entire structure was unbelievable, around 41,000 tons. In comparison, more steel was used in this single oil platform than in the construction of the Burj Khalifa. With the help of massive hydraulic jacks, it was slowly pushed forward, just 11 inches at a time, onto the floating dock. After that, tugboats pulled the floating dock away from the shipyard to a location where preparations were underway to load it onto one of the world's largest marine transport vessels. This was an operation that is truly considered one of the most complex and thrilling engineering challenges in the world. It was one of the largest marine transport vessels in existence, capable of carrying up to around 98,000 tons with ease. And it was on this gigantic ship that the structure had to be transported to the other side of the world, to the Gulf of Mexico. The next morning, the platform was lowered from the floating dock, and for the first time, this oil platform began to float on water. With the help of tugboats, it was slowly pulled toward the designated point, where the massive marine vessel was already waiting. Meanwhile, the super typhoon was rapidly approaching South Korea. It felt as if an invisible sword was hanging over the heads of the entire management team. At that moment, the typhoon was only 48 hours away. As time passed, its impact on the sea became increasingly visible. Wind speeds were rising, and the waves were growing more turbulent, which was a serious warning for the structure. In this situation, loading the oil platform onto the marine vessel was an extremely complex and risky task. The process worked like this. First, the ship filled its internal water tanks and slowly submerged beneath the water. Then, with the help of tugboats,
the structure was pulled and positioned over the submerged vessel. Finally, the ship expelled the water from its tanks, causing it to slowly rise back to the surface, and the platform settled securely on top of it.
But this entire process was far more difficult in reality than it sounds. This task is not as easy as it appears in animations. For such operations, it is absolutely essential for the sea to be completely calm, because if this work is carried out in rough waves, it becomes impossible to properly position the structure onto the vessel, and this could cause severe damage to both the vessel and the platform. But due to the super typhoon, the sea was extremely rough, with strong waves and powerful winds, making the operation nearly impossible. At the same time, time was running out quickly, and the stress level of the entire team had reached its peak. Just then, fortunately, a report came from the meteorological department that the next morning there would be a small 2-hour window when the sea was expected to remain relatively calm. If the task could be completed within these 2 hours, there was a chance of survival. Otherwise, there would be no opportunity left, because the super typhoon was only 36 hours away. The next morning, just as predicted, the sea was completely calm. Without wasting a single moment, the oil platform was quickly pulled onto the vessel. Then, the vessel expelled the water from its tanks, lifting the platform completely onto itself. Just a few hours before the super typhoon arrived, this seemingly impossible mission was successfully completed. By saving the oil platform from the super typhoon, the team successfully overcame their first major challenge. But that didn't mean there were no more challenges ahead. After several months of journey, at a shipyard in South Texas, the oil platform was unloaded once again because some important modules were being prepared there. These modules were then attached to the main structure of the platform. After that, it was once again sent toward its final destination, about 130 kilometers away, where it would be installed to operate for nearly 40 years. After 7 long years of hard work, the moment finally arrived when the structure had to be connected to the seafloor nearly 30,000 feet below. At the location where the platform was positioned, the sea depth was around 7,400 feet. It is so deep that nearly 3 Burj Khalifa could be stacked one on top of another. But the oil reservoir that the Appomattox needed to connect to was even deeper than that, located about 22,600 feet below. In other words, this massive connection had to be established in an extremely deep and unusual part of the ocean. At that depth, the water pressure is so extreme that it is almost impossible for humans to go there or carry out any mission. That's why, to connect the Appomattox for oil extraction, it was decided to use remotely operated underwater vehicles. For this task, a specialized installation team was working from a separate platform to install the underwater pipeline. Using a crane, they sent a remotely operated device deep into the ocean. This was an extremely complex operation, where the pipeline had to be placed at a very precise location. At a depth of around 22,600 feet, this work had to be done with incredible accuracy, with full control remaining in the hands of operators above. They controlled the entire mission almost like a video game. Fortunately, the task was successfully completed on the very first attempt. After that, the next phase began, transferring the pipeline from the installation platform to the Appomattox. This process is known as riser transfer, where 4 critical connections must be completed step by step. In this entire system, multiple stages were working simultaneously. From the remote system of Appomattox, a chain was first released, which was passed to another tip through a specialized device. That tip then grabbed the chain and pulled it toward a second platform. Finally, Appomattox pulled the chain back, securely positioning the pipeline toward itself. Then began the actual connection process. Nearly 30,000 feet below the seabed, the pipeline had to be connected to the oil reservoir. After months of preparation and training, the pipe was finally successfully connected to the oil source. Now came the most critical moment, to begin oil extraction. The entire team gathered together to witness that moment. The oil pump was started with just a single button. When oil first began to rise from a depth of nearly 30,000 feet, the entire team was filled with incredible joy and smiles of success. The 7 years of hard work by workers, junior staff, and management had finally paid off. The oil flow and its quality were absolutely perfect. The structure is capable of producing around 175,000 barrels of oil per day. This amount of fuel is enough to run approximately 4 million cars for an entire day. According to Shell's estimates, it will continue producing oil in the same way for the next 40 years, until around the year 2060.